This week we cover Axiom Space finding it tough to pay the bills. Our second story covers the NASA award to Intuitive Machines for navigation and communication services for the Moon. Third, some updates from small space startups from the World Space Business Week conference. And finally, for this week, Sirius Space secures a landing pad in Australia. Okay, let's get started. Axiom Space, a US space startup with ambitions to build private space stations for commercial activities, is facing big financial and operational challenges. Founded by billionaire Cam Gaffaranian and former NASA official Michael Suffredini, the company aims to build a free-flying Axiom space station. Initially, it will attach modules to the International Space Station and then at a later date detach from the ISS to be free-flying. However, it's currently suffering a cash crunch that could doom the company unless its fortunes can be turned around. What are the problems it's facing? Let's examine them. First, after closing a large funding round of $350 million in 2022, it spent big, increasing its headcount to over 800 employees. That's fine if you're a government agency, but for startups, it's normal to have a smaller, agile workforce. The strategy of offering private astronaut missions at a price that resulted in Axiom Space losing money was deliberate. The thinking was, by building relations with other space agencies, you would recoup any losses by signing contracts on the Axiom Space Station. NASA deciding that the commander of the private missions needed to be an experienced astronaut instead of a paying customer made it impossible for Axiom to make any money on these private missions. Delays in building the space station modules means no money from NASA for completing milestones, no money from private clients, and the need to downsize future modules, making them less commercially viable in the future. The high valuation placed on Axiom by investors makes it difficult for them to raise additional funds. Skepticism about commercial space stations has been increasing. Axiom is behind on paying its suppliers, such as Thales Alenia, who manufactures the Axiom Space Station modules, and SpaceX, who launch their private astronaut missions. In short, the commercial space station market is not seen as viable by many investors. NASA will have to decide if national security requires access to low Earth orbit, and if so, step in and pay more money to Axiom Space and other US-based commercial space station startups. Otherwise, these promising companies could go bust. Anyway, we'll keep you informed on the commercial space station market and hope these companies can succeed in opening up low Earth orbit to more people and companies. Let's move on to our next story. NASA awards Intuitive Machines a contract worth up to $4.8 billion for communication and navigation services for the Moon. Intuitive Machines, a leading space exploration company, announced NASA has awarded the company a Near Space Network contract for communication and navigation services for missions in the Near Space region, which extends from Earth's surface to beyond the Moon. The contract is for a 5-year period initially, with an additional 5-year option possible. The maximum potential value of the contract is $4.82 billion. This contract marks an inflection point in Intuitive Machines' leadership in space communications and navigation, says Intuitive Machines CEO Steve Altemus. We're pleased to partner with NASA as one team to support the Artemis campaign and endeavours to expand the lunar economy. A key highlight of this contract is the unveiling of Intuitive Machines' Lunar Satellite Constellation, a service the company believes can help commercialize lunar activities. The constellation will provide enhanced data and transmission services and autonomous operations, helping to create robust infrastructure on the Moon. Intuitive Machines believes 3 pillars are needed on the Moon to support commercial activities. 1. Delivery. Scaling lunar lander capabilities to support cargo and infrastructure delivery. 2. Data transmission services. Establishing a network of satellites capable of delivering 4K resolution video data and navigation services. This service will assist in landing site selection and resource prospecting. And 3. Autonomous operations. Developing infrastructure, logistics and mapping solutions on the Moon to accelerate exploration and logistics operations. As part of this contract, the company will deploy lunar relay satellites and provide communication and navigation services that play an essential role in NASA's Artemis campaign to establish a long-term presence on the Moon. Okay, on to our third segment this week. Space startups make progress despite tough market conditions. At the World Space Business Week conference this week, we got updates from some of the small space startup players. Here's what we learned. Despite competition for SpaceX, companies like Orbex, Latitude, and Sirius Space Services are developing small launch vehicles, emphasizing flexibility over cost. Orbex plans to launch its prime vehicle from Scotland by 2025, with commercial operations starting in 2026. Latitude aims for a test launch by late 2025, while Sirius Space Services is set for a mid-2026 test flight, with launches from Australia. These companies need frequent launches to be profitable, a threshold currently met only by Rocket Lab's Electron. Despite industry setbacks, including failures by ABL and Rocket Factory Augsburg, these startups see global demand, particularly from European governments and international clients, suggesting that while not all will succeed, a few specialized companies might thrive in the market. The new space startups offering launch services need to fly frequently to make money. Currently, only Rocket Lab is doing that with 10 launches this year. According to Rocket Lab, there is strong demand from customers for launches. That bodes well for new companies looking to enter the market. Also, customers aren't looking for a single launch. They mostly want large batches of launches because they use many satellites to fulfill their services. For instance, Earth observation or communications can't be done with a single satellite. You need a fleet of satellites to have 24/7 coverage. Given Rocket Lab has a large backlog, it certainly looks like there is robust and growing demand for launches in the foreseeable future. Latitude said at the conference, demand is coming from, quote, all over the place, including both European governments and international commercial customers. It's expected some of the new space entrants will fade away, but at least a few will survive in Europe. I think there could be 2 or 3 companies in Europe easily, Orbex's Bello Mora said of Small Launch Vehicle Ventures. Okay, on to our final news story this week. Sirius Space secures launch pad in Australia. French launch provider Sirius Space Services has signed an agreement with Equatorial Launch Australia to secure a launch facility at the company's Arnhem Space Centre in Australia. Sirius Space was founded in 2020 and is developing rockets that will be capable of delivering payloads of between 175 and 1,100 kilos to low Earth orbit. The company's largest Sirius 13 and Sirius 15 rockets are both designed to be partially reusable, with the latter featuring 4 recoverable strap-on boosters. The company announced at the World Space Business Week conference in Paris that it has secured access to the Australian launch site. The company will take up residence at Arnhem Space Centre's Launch Complex No. 3, which the company has renamed Le Mans. According to Sirius Space, one of the main reasons for selecting this site is the flexibility it gives for launching into a wide range of orbital inclinations. Construction of the launch complex will begin in October 2024, with the company aiming to have the launch pad operational by the second half of 2025. The first launch of Sirius 1 on a ballistic flight will be in 2026, with launches in 2027 on bigger rockets. Sirius Space already has a launch facility at the French Guiana Space Centre, where Ariane 6 launches from. With its new launch pad in Australia, they're aiming for 18 missions per year, providing they can find enough customers and build rockets quickly enough, of course. Okay, that's it for this week. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest news on commercial space startups around the globe, from rocket launchers to space stations, orbital tugs, lunar landers and more. If it's a commercial space startup, we cover it. See you soon.